Welcome to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast, the place for scrappy entrepreneurs who want to learn actionable steps and strategies to grow the traffic, sales, and profit in your e-commerce business. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster, a 20-year retail veteran and former brick-and-mortar boutique owner who spent 3 years as the only employee of a 7-figure online store. That shit was crazy. I know exactly how it feels to do all the things, and I'm sharing everything I learned the hard way so you don't have to. I may have started this business by accident, but supporting badass bosses like you lights me the fuck up, and I am so stoked to see you grow. Are you ready, babe? Let's roll. Hello, friend, and Happy New Year. Welcome to the eCommerce Badassery Podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Totillo-Coster. I'm super stoked to be with you today. It's been a minute since I published a podcast episode, which is unlike me. I didn't intend to take the last couple of weeks off, but I ended up redoing my backyard, a project that's been on our list since we moved in 3 years ago. Then the holidays, hosting, life happened. But I think it will actually work in your favor because you can hear this episode while you have that New Year excitement and without all the distractions. We're finally diving into the results from the Pulse Check survey I ran a few months ago, along with an update I got about performance through Q4. We'll talk through the stats, my observations, and what I think it means for you moving forward. Before we do that, I just want to give a shout out to everyone who took the time to fill out the survey. I really appreciate you. And a special shout out to the respondent who said you had a recession-resistant business, your packaging strategy and email were really successful for you in 2025. I just want to say your answer to the last question of the survey, anything else you want me to know, had me laughing out loud. You know why. I very much appreciated your response and description of the situation, and I agree. Okay, let's get into the episode. Here's the good news. There are more businesses doing well than not. Of all respondents, 70% are doing the same or better than last year. And yes, I considered flat to LY a success. This carried through in the Q4 follow-up with only 13% of people reporting that their profit is down. Everyone else is somewhere from flat to up, regardless of their sales. I was happy to see that the general performance of Q4 held to the stats we saw earlier in the year. A few quick anecdotal observations from my community and what Katie Hunt of Proof to Product and Kristen Fisher are both hearing from their audience. First, sales patterns did change throughout the year compared to what they usually are. For example, seeing a softer Q2 than usual, but then making up the difference in Q3. And this feedback was for both retail and wholesale. Second, and likely the most important, is that a lot of merchants felt like they were doing worse in 2025 compared to 2024. And it wasn't until they were pushed to look at their actual numbers where they figured out, oh, I'm up year over year and doing better than I thought. Moral of the story, when it comes to business results, perception is not reality and the data doesn't lie. Make sure you're digging into your numbers before you stress out about your business. All right, so we're going to dive in starting with sales channels. When it comes to sales channels, website and Etsy both performed pretty much the same as the overall sales numbers, with 75% of people reporting flat or increased sales and 25% seeing a decline. I was actually a little surprised by this stat because I've been hearing people struggling with Etsy. Whether this result is because Etsy bounced back or maybe people just ditched it and so they didn't report it as a channel that they used, I'm not sure. Amazon, wholesale, and in-person, about 40% of businesses reported a decline in sales on those channels. So they're definitely the softest. When it comes to Amazon, I'm no expert on this platform, but if I had to guess why that channel is seeing a decline for a lot of people, it's likely due to saturation and visibility on the platform. If what you sell isn't super unique, there's a ton of other people selling it too. That doesn't mean Amazon isn't a viable platform. You may just have to invest in some ads, switch to Fulfilled by Amazon to be more competitive, or if you don't already have your own website, put some effort into driving traffic to your Amazon listings from off the platform versus relying only on their existing search traffic. The decline in wholesale and in-person, a lot of this was likely due to the uncertainty of things at the moment, and this is true even if you're not in the US, because what happens here affects everyone. What was surprising to me about this data is, unlike what we've seen in the results of surveys that Katie Hunt has done, there wasn't much of a difference in the number of channels for those who were doing well and those who weren't. A lot of times the data hints that people might be spread too thin, not giving one channel enough attention. That pattern didn't show up here. Granted, this was a smaller sample size than Katie had, and there's a lot of variables in the respondents, right, coming from my audience. So even though that pattern didn't show itself, I still stand by my recommendation to do less but better. I did have a question about TikTok Shop on here, but not enough people were using it to have any meaningful insight. I'll be interested to see if that changes at all in 2026. I'm probably going to do a separate episode about TikTok Shop and what I've observed as a user, so stay tuned for that. I also had 2 questions on this survey about marketing confidence and decision-making style. I was surprised by this result too. The decision-making style didn't weigh as heavily as expected. And I thought trying to make the right choice would make up a larger percentage of the businesses that were struggling. But the data didn't say that. It was pretty even across the board. What did show up was the confidence in your marketing strategy. Of the struggling businesses, 92% said they were totally winging their marketing strategy versus just 24% of those who were flat or up year over year. If we look at it in the other direction, when we isolate the businesses that say they're winging their marketing, about 61% of them report declining sales. The clearest lesson from this data isn't about being decisive or having everything figured out. It's about whether you have a marketing strategy at all. Because to me, saying that I'm totally winging it means you're just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Like you don't have a tried and true strategy that you are improving over time. And this rings true for my clients and students. Those who create and follow a plan, even if it's missing the things most of us think we have to do, like posting on social media, most of them are seeing growth. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The most successful e-commerce and product-based businesses are the boring ones. The ones that just stick to the tried and true strategies that get better over time. They're not necessarily the same for every business, but it's usually some combination of email, SEO, in-person or wholesale, launch cycles, paid ads. If you're in the totally winging it stage, I recommend you take some time to look back at where you spent your time in 2025 and what didn't bring you measurable results. For a lot of you, it's likely going to be social media because it just ain't what it used to be. That's not to say there aren't businesses killing it on social. I know some who started doing so well on social media that they stopped their paid ads. And I had a lot of people respond to the survey and said social's doing well for them. But these days, that's the exception, not the rule. At the end of the day, we've been sold the lie that social media is free. But it's not. It takes a lot of time and energy to do it well, especially now. So if you are grinding away at social media, hoping that you're going to go viral and your product-based business is going to grow, I encourage you to consider putting your time and energy into something else. What exactly that is will depend on your business. If that's something you want help figuring out, the lounge is a great place to get that support from me. The next question I asked is whether people were doing more, the same, or less marketing in 2025 than the year before. For this, I'm kicking myself for not having a follow-up question about what the answers meant to them. I don't know if more marketing means more consistency, higher frequency, more channels, more experimentation. How I overlooked that, I don't know. Bad survey creator. We do get some insight about this when I asked about which marketing activities they were using in their business, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. But in the meantime, let me tell you what I usually see among my clients and students. More marketing usually means higher frequency, for example, sending 2 to 3 emails per week versus 1, or more consistency, not missing a week in emails, doing launch events quarterly. And sometimes it means having a marketing plan versus nothing at all. Those who said they were doing more marketing were generally seeing better results. But again, that doesn't automatically mean they're doing more marketing activities. So don't take that as, oh, I just need to do more marketing on more channels and spread myself really thin and then everything will be great. The more important insight I took from this was those who were doing more marketing, only 13% of them said that they were just winging their strategy. To me, that says they're not just doing more marketing for the sake of more marketing. They're confident in their strategy, likely doubling down on what already works or only expanding their strategy when they have the foundations running like a well-oiled machine. On the flip side of that, of those who said they are doing less marketing, 69% of them said they're totally winging it. My educated guess is they're overwhelmed, not really sure what to work on, and possibly giving up too soon on a strategy, not allowing enough time for it to catch traction. So let's talk about marketing activities. As I mentioned, I don't have direct answers about what more marketing means, but I was able to make some inferences from the next question, which was about which marketing activities they were using in their business. This included things like sending regular marketing emails, posting social media content consistently, specifically that word consistently, running paid ads, on-site SEO, etc. And I asked them to check all that apply. The result? Those who reported 1 or 2 marketing activities, 68 and 66% of them reported being flat or up to LY. Once you get to 3 activities, it drops to 50-50. So it's not a definitive answer, but it is a pattern. And going back to our more marketing question, even those that reported they were doing more marketing, 93% of those respondents reported doing 3 or fewer activities. So again, not a definitive answer, but it does show that more marketing, even if it is an additional channel, is still targeted maxing out at 3 marketing activities. So the lesson is still do less but better. Then we got to the visibility and engagement activities. How are people interacting with their community? For example, doing live events, collaborating with other product-based businesses, engaging on social media, doing in-person pop-ups, public relations. The results here were basically unremarkable, with a pretty even split in performance across each individual activity and a pretty even split of which ones people were doing. But the sweet spot seems to be 2 activities, with 75% of people who picked only 2 things were up over last year. Hopefully you understood what I just said. There was also a large group of people who picked none of these things. They were mostly up in sales, but when I dug a little bit deeper, they came out on the 2 extremes of either being in business for a really long time or just starting out. So it's like they haven't even quite gotten to this stage yet, or they've been in business a long time and they don't really have to do this stuff anymore. Then we had a strategy and growth question. I asked them to select things such as testing new strategies, offers, or platforms, investing in mentorship. Unsurprisingly, those who were testing new things and investing in mentorship saw higher rates of increased sales year over year. So far, we've been looking at structured questions and answers, check boxes, percentages, patterns you can measure. But I also wanted to zoom out and look at the open-ended responses to my question of which 3 marketing strategies or activities have driven the most sales for you recently. There was a wide range of answers, everything from SEO to ads, in-person, wholesale, social media, and yes, even a hope and a prayer. That made me laugh out loud because it was just too real. Some people said nothing seemed statistically significant. Others were all in on one thing, usually SEO or email. But when I stepped back to look at the full picture, there was a pattern that emerged. No matter what they listed, SEO, ads, social, email was almost always part of that ecosystem. It showed up more than any other channel. As someone who started this business to show e-commerce store owners the power of email marketing, I was obviously thrilled to see that. Granted, the respondents are probably heavily weighted to my audience, and I've been harassing them about doing email for as long as they've been in my world, but to see that my nagging is working and positively impacting their business, I'm so happy. I think the other big takeaway here is there is no one right way to grow your business. You get to choose where you want to focus. As long as you have email there to back that up and be the catch-all. And the key here is focus. So you get to pick the ones you enjoy, that you're good at. And what's that saying? What you water grows, right? So put your focus into the things that you love, have email there to back you up, and you can mostly pick and choose where you're going to spend your time. Another open-ended question was, what do you think is most influencing your business results right now, positively or negatively? Nothing too surprising here. On the negative side, mostly macroeconomic factors, economy, tariffs, rising metal costs, declines in foot traffic, changing shopping patterns, longer times between repeat purchases. Business owners are overwhelmed and unable to focus. And I felt that big time in 2025 too, sending you virtual hugs right now. On the positive side, there were a couple of people who said they were focusing heavily on wholesale growth and seeing success from that. One person shared they committed to pitching 5 new wholesale accounts every quarter and sending a quarterly wholesale newsletter. They were up 400% in wholesale thanks to these efforts, which are covering the 40% in-person decline they experienced, noting that they didn't change anything about in-person. But I think my favorite answer overall was stressing about it less. I think this is a good lesson for all of us. And I know it's hard, especially if it's your livelihood. But also, we're just selling a product, products that make people happy, solve their problems. Sometimes I think we need to get out of the weeds and into the joy, bringing back the spark we had when we first started and we're just so excited about what we were doing and creating. That shines through in your marketing too. Easier said than done, of course, but it's a great reminder. Then we had the usual suspects of meta ads, using data to make decisions, both having an overall positive effect. Now on to the biggest culprit of the 2025 uncertainty, the tariffs. 73% of respondents were affected by tariffs in some way. Either they're paying them because they import their products, their vendors have raised prices, or they sell into the US and their product is subject to tariffs. When it comes to how they're handling it, the top 2 answers were I raised my prices or I already had enough margin to cover it. For those business owners outside of the US, half of them stopped shipping here. 10% of respondents reduced other expenses or adjusted materials, and just 3% negotiated with their vendors. I didn't see anyone charging the tariff as a line item. I think in most cases, if you have a lower priced product, it's okay to bake the tariff cost into your item price. For higher priced items, I would charge it as a line item for transparency, but 75% of the respondents to this survey have an AOV under $100, so it makes sense that I didn't see a lot of that. For the most part, the tariff drama has seemed to calm down. Admittedly, I haven't been tracking it quite as closely as I did in the beginning because they keep announcing tariffs and then backing off. As an Italian, I wasn't super stoked about those pasta tariffs. Of course, the drama isn't over, as it will be a bit until the Supreme Court rules on the sweeping tariffs, and larger corporations that stocked up on goods before the tariffs hit will have to start ordering inventory soon. While you may not be directly affected by any additional tariffs, your consumers will be. And that brings me to what I think we should expect in 2026. Let's start with the bad news. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. Inflation, job losses, tightening of the purse strings. I think it's going to get worse in 26. I don't believe the effects of the tariffs have been fully realized yet. Many bigger companies stocked up before they hit, and even if they manage to get themselves an exclusion, just like we saw during the pandemic and with the bird flu, corporations will charge what they think the market will bear, and I expect the cost of everyday necessities to continue to rise. The same is true for energy costs. Between the cost of AI data centers being passed to regular customers and oil companies limiting supply to stay profitable, all signs point to prices increasing. While the US is not technically in a recession, if you were to strip out the AI investment and luxury spending, we are. The top 10% of earners account for about half of all consumer spending in the US right now, while middle and lower income people have slowed spending while racking up credit card debt. As credit cards get maxed out and unemployment runs out, people are really going to slow down their spending. I tell you these things not to stress you out, make you fearful for your business, or to be all doom and gloom. It's just to give you the information so you're not surprised when it happens. For me personally, it's the unknown that's the most stressful. Now that I've come to terms with it all, it's much easier to stay focused and move forward. And as an elder millennial, this is not my first rodeo. I'm not going to get into the details of what typically happens with consumer spending during a recession. I covered that on episode 246, why recessions aren't as scary as they sound. I'll stick a link in the show notes if you want to listen. So with all of that in mind, what should you do in 2026 to grow your e-commerce business? If you've been hanging with me for any amount of time, I don't think you're going to be surprised by any of this, but let's go through it anyway. First things first, double down on what's working and drop the rest. I say this all the time because I know it to be true. It's proven in the data of this survey. It's proven in Katie of Proof to Product State of the Industry survey. It's proven in the conversations I have with biz friends and what their audience is seeing. It's proven in the results of my students, clients, and lounge members. Do less, but better. For some of you, that's going to be the same things that have always worked. For example, ads and email. For others, you might have a channel that stops performing as well as it has in the past and you have to pivot. So maybe instead of focusing on email, social, and in-person, now you're focusing on email, social, and wholesale. Or maybe you're going to drop organic social and invest in ads instead. Remember, social media is not free. That's step one. Identify what those are going to be and commit to that plan for 2026. Give anything new a minimum of 90 days before you throw in the towel and be relentless at it. Think back to that biz owner who said they committed to pitching 5 new retailers every quarter. She saw a 400% increase in her wholesale sales. In fairness, it sounds like she's newer to wholesale, so of course she's going to have bigger increases than someone who's already more established there. But think of what just a 30% increase could do if you really put your mind to it. Next, you want to focus on optimizing for the traffic and customers you already have. That might be site optimizations, such as adding bundles and cross-sells, redoing your product pages to make sure people can get the information they need to make a buying decision. It could mean sending 3 emails per week instead of 1. It might look like developing more evergreen products for your existing audience, optimizing your email automations, or updating your product packaging. Third, figure out how you're going to get in front of new people. If your existing customers are spending less and not shopping as often, you need more customers to fill in the gap. Start with the basics like connecting your product feed to Google Shopping if you haven't done that already. Someone in the survey mentioned this made a difference for them in 2025. Think about where your perfect customer is, and it might be someone different depending upon your price point. For example, if you're a slightly higher priced item that is somewhat aspirational to your current customer, right? Like they save up to buy from you. It's possible they're going to have to find a lower priced alternative. However, maybe there's someone who typically buys a different brand that's aspirational to them, and you are now the more affordable option. Maybe it's time to do more collaborations with other product-based business owners. Get into community with other small businesses since they're usually the biggest consumers of small businesses. and tap into whatever you discovered in step 1. Like I said, none of this is revolutionary, but it's possible that it means something different to your business than it did the last time you heard me say it, so it's important that you revisit this. And then lastly, the biggest change we're likely going to see in 2026 is the rise of AI search. Shopify announced their partnership with ChatGPT during their winter editions. I'll stick a link in the show notes for you to check out that episode. At the time of this recording, the integration hasn't been released yet, and there is still a form for you to fill out if you want to be notified when that happens. I will stick a link in the show notes for that too. While agentic storefronts, that's what Shopify is calling them, will be super helpful for visibility in search engines, the good news is products from small businesses are already showing up in AI. I talk more about this in episode 328, Your Products in ChatGPT. Here's how small brands are already showing up. A lot of it comes down to good old standard SEO. If SEO wasn't already on your radar for 2026, it probably should be. I'll stick some links in the show notes with resources for you. One-ish final thought before we go. Focus on controlling the things you can control. There are always going to be outside forces that affect your business that you can't do anything about. It does us no good to harp on those things. As I like to remind myself, sometimes we just gotta put on our big girl or boy panties and do the damn thing. Do your best to just keep your eyes on your own paper, check in with your numbers regularly so you have a true picture of what's happening in your business, and don't be afraid to pivot if you feel called to. That might look like trying new things in your business, like we've talked about in this episode, or doing something completely different. I've seen people go back to a regular job. Some started a new business while they just let their existing product business do what it's naturally going to do. Some people have retired and decided to travel the world or sold everything they owned and moved to another country. I think the most important thing for all of us is to get out from behind our computers, and I really hate this saying, but touch grass. I think it's especially important if you don't have children like me. When you have kids, that sort of just happens naturally. If you don't, you have to make more effort. If you take nothing else away from today's episode, let it be that no matter how your business performed in 2025, someone else had the same experience. Even if you feel totally alone, it's just because they aren't talking about it. And on the whole, product-based businesses are doing good. Yes, there are some hiccups, but the majority of people are flat or up to the previous year. If you are not one of them, don't be discouraged. This is just evidence that it's possible. And stick with me in 2026 so I can walk you through how to get it done. Don't forget to check the show notes for all of the resources and episodes that I mentioned today, along with a couple bonus ones. You can head to ecommercebadassery.com/358 for all of those links. And that, my friends, is a wrap on this week's episode. I hope you're having a kick-ass start to the new year, and I'll see you on the flip side. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you want to learn more about growing your e-commerce business, get started with my free resource library at ecommercebadassery.com/free stuff and get an invite to the lounge, my e-commerce marketing membership. When you're ready for one-on-one support, apply to work with me at ecommercebadassery.com/apply. Before you go, would you do me a quick favor? Leave a rating and review and tap that follow button. This pushes me up the chart so I can support more scrappy e-commerce entrepreneurs just like you. I'm on a mission to reach as many as I can, and I could really use your help. Thanks so much in advance. Until next time, e-commerce friend, stay badass.